So here we find ourselves at a very critical point in humanity, at a time where science and spirituality are beginning to converge, where characters and archetypes are rising up and triggering our deepest wounding, where all of the crap and all of the pus of humanity, the shadow nature, is beginning to come to the surface and purge. And it's a gritty time. It's a sticky time. And it's really uncomfortable in so many ways as these waves of purging happen through us. And so we have a choice point here, each and every one of us. And it's whether we want to evolve through our revolutions through these cycles, or whether we want to stay in suffering and separation through our reactive nature, which is the shadow of revolution. And so I've been contemplating the 49th gene key, which governs this codon in our DNA, which is essentially responsible for how we handle change, how we handle the rebirthing of humanity. It's the aspect of our DNA that governs the cutting away of all that doesn't serve in order to make room for the birth of that which will serve for our future. And for that process to happen, we first need to allow that repressed nature to come to the surface, to be acknowledged, to be deeply understood of the service that it has played in getting us to here. And when we can deeply understand how all of these shadow natures and this crap that is purging right now, if we can understand that it has actually served a purpose, then we can begin to forgive this nature. We can begin to let go. And when we let go, it means we can continue to revolve around the sun and allow our planetary consciousness to rise up. And instead of spiraling around our evolutionary process in a never-ending circle, repeating the same patterns, which is reaction, reacting the same actions, that's the shadow nature of revolution. It's the shadow nature of rebirthing. And so when we get stuck reacting, that comes from intolerance. That comes from misunderstanding of people different to us. It's a very tribal behavior pattern where we band together. You see it in politics, left and right. You see it in spirituality, people banding to their belief systems. You see it in science, people banding to those that hold the same philosophies. It's a very tribal thing, and humans can be very tribal. And revolution is a tribal thing. It requires tribes to understand the difference between each other so that we can stop reacting and trying to cut each other out of the picture and instead begin to merge the different perspectives into this cauldron of revolution. And when we can begin to deeply understand all these shadows that have driven us to this point and the roles that we're all playing and why we have such different perspectives. Because it's not because someone's an asshole that they're right wing, or because they're a bleeding heart that they're a left wing. There's actually deep reasonings and meanings and beliefs and things that drive them to that standpoint. And when we can, instead of reacting out of some kind of defensive nature, but rather have compassion to listen to understand these different parties, we can begin the conversation. And when we begin that conversation and bring these different elements together in this melting pot, and we allow the friction to happen in a safe way, in safe environments, which our political environment and social media right now doesn't really provide, but we're working on it. And so we have a choice. We can continue to fight that which we don't understand. We can fight that which we fear. Or we can instead stand up and join together in trying to understand each other, trying to understand where these people come from. Not understand so that you can convince them you're right and win the argument, but truly understand. How does someone come to that perspective? What purpose could that possibly play? And as we listen to understand to these different perspectives, and as we listen to our own traumas and purging that's happening, and when you listen to your reactions, and instead of looking externally at the outside world as to what they're doing wrong that I'm reacting to. But when I can look at my reaction and understand why I'm reacting, I begin to find that there's this disconnection within me that I can heal. And when we all take responsibility for this healing, when we all begin to do what we can to evolve our consciousness and our self-awareness and self-responsibility and work together to spread this level of understanding, then instead of constantly running a circle around on the same spot, repeating the same woundings and the same patterns in a reactionary manner again and again, year after year, then instead what we begin to do is we begin to spiral upwards in consciousness. And so it will feel to many like we are simply revisiting the same patterns all the time. The 60s and 70s had the revolutionary period, and now we're back there again. And many people that I share about, what I see happening in the world and how it's changing and the conversations that are happening, some of the more jaded older generation, and very understandably, would say, but Mark, it's always happened. That's humanity. It's not going to change. Good on you for being an optimist, but it's just how it does. We just keep running that circle. Then I challenge you with that if you stand with that viewpoint. I challenge you to truly see that we are not repeating the same patterns, but rather that consciousness and its evolution is a cycle. And as the gene keys are a beautiful thing, the gene keys, when you look at the 64 gene keys, they run through a solar year. All of them run in a cycle, and there is a pattern. And that pattern is the evolution of human consciousness and how we move through it. And so yes, when we come back around every cycle, it is a similar theme. But the question is, how are you going to respond to it? Because if you take the opportunity to grow, to understand, to be compassionate and make changes, and actually take the ability to respond with accountability and take actions in your life to improve yourself in that manner, then that cycle will continually spiral upwards and upwards. And we will together transform humanity. And we will need to go through hard times. There are challenging moments because we must remove all that is no longer serving so that we can make way for that which does. But we don't have to be angry about it. We don't have to fight it. But we do need to be strong. We do need to develop our belief in ourselves. We do need to develop self-awareness and accountability. And we do need to learn how to listen to each other, even if we have differing opinions.